All right. So welcome and thanks for joining us today. My name's Emily Heald. I'm the Rivers Educator here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension. I am the statewide coordinator for Snapshot Day. Again, we are going to be recording this training so that folks who can't make it today can view the training at a later time. This is the 13th annual Snapshot Day. So this is an event that's coordinated in collaboration between Extension, the Citizen Lake Monitoring Network, the Wisconsin DNR, and then as I'll talk about in a second, even the state of Minnesota is in on this event. So this is a one-day event where folks like you are going out all across the great state of Wisconsin in search for aquatic invasive species. You'll be led by a local site leader who is usually a county or a nonprofit staff partner. Last year we had about over 140 volunteers, so it is a larger event. We get a ton of great data on aquatic invasive species distribution. So thank you again for coming to this training today and for signing up for Snapshot Day. So a quick overview of where we're going with this today. I first want to talk a little bit about, what Snapshot Day even is, the history of it, and where we are with the event now. And then we're going to go into the day of schedule and what that looks like. We're going to talk a little bit about species identification, the monitoring protocols. We're going to talk about how to stay safe during the event and some safety reminders, how to fill out the data sheet and collect specimens, cleaning your gear, and then there will be plenty of time for questions for this to all fit in the hour here. So for some history of the event, this Snapshot Day event began in 2014, and it was focused originally on detecting aquatic invasive species in rivers, specifically near bridge sites where folks are more likely to release aquarium species that can then become invasive. So the original name of the event was Aquatic Invasive Species Bridge Snapshot Day. But aside from looking for new species that may have come into an area, it's also a really great way to raise awareness about invasive species in general. And it has now since expanded to include lakes and wetlands. So we've always partnered with River Alliance and the Wisconsin DNR, but now the event is primarily coordinated through UW-Madison Division of Extension, which is who I work for. And here we are today. We have over 20 participating locations across the state each year. We've had a lot of success in the program with our early detection of aquatic invasive species, with helping with the quick management and response of new detections. And our volunteers have helped with some really meaningful discoveries. So that helps us to, respond to situations more quickly in the hopes that things don't get out of control as quickly. And then that helps us have more effective management to catch some things sooner than later. You have a better chance of controlling a situation. As I mentioned before, with Minnesota coming into play here, we also have a sister event in Minnesota that happens on the same day as Snapshot Day. They call their event Starry Trek. So you're part of a multi-state effort with this event as well. So these two events are coordinated in tandem each year to be on the same day. We use the same monitoring protocols and overall organization style. Minnesota, the event name is called Starry Trek because they're mostly focusing on a single species called starry stonewort. That's why the name is Starry Trek. But they're expanding to other species now too. I wanted to show you a few brief results from Snapshot Day 2025 to show you the big impact that you're having by volunteering. So this map shows all the locations where Snapshot Day was hosted across the state last year. And then you can see we had 176 participants who helped to monitor 100 water bodies. With this chart here, I don't necessarily expect you to be able to read everything, but what you're seeing here on the left is a list of all the different species found by volunteers last year. These blue bars are indicating instances where species have been reported by volunteers, but we already knew they were there. And the orange are new discoveries. So if you look at just the orange bars on here, you can see those are all new volunteer discoveries, and there's a lot of them there, and it's just amazing. And then I wanted to show you an image of all of the Snapshot Day locations that we have this year. We have over 20 of them occurring across the state. It's actually at 25. All right, so getting into it, what actually happens on the day of Snapshot Day? So you should have already signed up for a site location on where to meet, and groups, again, are meeting all over Wisconsin. You will likely meet with your site leader around 8:30, but please be checking your email within the next few days here to make sure of that time. Your site leaders are going to be emailing you at least a week ahead of time to let you know exact timelines, exactly where to meet. They're going to provide you with an address and likely a map of where to park and where to meet them. We're going to talk more about communication with your site leader in a little bit here. And then when you get there, it's going to be standard day of event stuff right off the bat. So, like signing in, reading a liability form, things like that. If you have extra time, if you arrived early, you can start looking at the different specimens that people will have out on the tables for you to learn. And then your site leader is going to provide you with a brief training. They're going to remind you what you learned here today. And they're also going to provide you with any local information that you need. So you're going to be thoroughly trained before you're sent out on your own. They're going to show you how to identify a few different aquatic invasive species using some hands-on examples. And then they're going to show you how to monitor for them. And then once you're all trained up, the volunteers will head out to the monitoring sites nearby to search for invasive species, and you're going to bring back your suspect samples. And y'all are either going to carpool or drive yourselves to monitoring sites, and then you'll reconvene back at the site that you met at to work with your site leader to identify the findings of your day. And that's it. That's a half day of your time, and it makes a huge difference. Just another quick note on getting to your monitoring sites after you're trained. You may be asked to drive up to 15 minutes to reach a monitoring site, or some sites might be like really close to your training location, and your site leader is going to group them together for you. Again, you're welcome to carpool to monitoring sites with other volunteers only if you feel comfortable with that. You're also welcome to drive your own vehicle and sort of caravan with your monitoring group to get to those sites as well. So each meeting location across the state will be searching for a different subset of species that are chosen by their site leader. So site leaders are able to choose from a list of 24 different species of concern. And the site leaders are choosing just a few of them to teach you based on local issues. So these could be species that have not been found in the area yet that your site leader wants to know about as soon as possible if they arrive. Or your site leader could be choosing species that are already known to be in the area and they want to check their potential spread. So each location around the state is going to be slightly different in the species that you're learning. This is a list of the target species that the site leaders are choosing from. So your site leader is going to choose 3 to 5 of these species and teach you how to identify them. You're not expected to be an expert. You're simply going to look for anything that resembles the species that the site leader is teaching you. You bring them back to your site leader at the end of your monitoring, and then that site leader is the expert that's going to help you determine if you found an invasive species or not. So I'm going to go over a little bit of identification today of some of these species. Your site leader is going to go over them with you more thoroughly the day of. They're going to have pictures and specimens to teach you exactly what these things look like. I just want to start getting you familiar with some of these and to show you a few ID tips so you can kind of get used to learning about some of these identification tactics. So again, you're not expected to know all of these. You're going to be taught, just a few of these with some hands-on specimens and pictures. So we're just going to go over a few common invasive species that are maybe less widespread in Wisconsin. It makes them a little bit more of a concern here. And then I'm also going to cover a couple that are pretty common in Wisconsin, just so maybe you get a new way of looking at things around you. We're also going to be offering you a variety of resources during Snapshot Day that your site leader will have that they'll be giving to you. So, just not a scary thing to have to look for invasive species. You're going to have a ton of support and resources. So we're just going to start getting used to noticing some features of invasive species. And we're first up going to look at aquatic plants. And there's no quiz after here. So we're just warming up our brains to the invasive species state of mind. So Curly leaf pondweed is the first one I want to show you. This is one that's fairly common. It's a submerged aquatic plant, meaning it grows underwater. And when you hold this plant up, the leaf looks like a lasagna noodle. You see how wavy they are here? It looks very lasagna noodle-like with these wavy edges. And if you're holding it and you run your fingers along the edge of the leaf here, you'll notice that it has texture. It's kind of spiky because if you look really closely at the leaf edges, this is called a serrated leaf edge, where it has these kind of like spiky serrated edges here, like a little knife. So, if you're familiar with touching lake plants, a lot of times when you touch plants, they feel kind of slimy. This one, if you run your hands through it, it has kind of a prickly texture. It doesn't hurt you, but you can feel texture to it. Here's a map of the distribution of curly leaf pondweed in Wisconsin. All these green dots mean that we know that curly leaf pondweed is there. And so you can see it's pretty widespread here. The next one I want to show you is called European frogbit. It's a floating aquatic plant, so its roots are growing down into the water, but it also has, this lily pad type structure floating on top of the water here. That leaf on the top of the water can be anywhere from a ½ inch to 2½ inches across. It has this heart-shaped leaf to it. A lot of times it's kind of a dark purple on the underside, and they have air pockets in them that help them float. So this plant, it's free floating, so the roots just hang below it. The roots don't go into the soil. And when it's flowering, this plant has 3 white petals with this yellow center. And European frogbit, this is one of the ones that is not super widespread in Wisconsin right now. The first population of this species was discovered in 2021, so fairly recently, near the city of Oconto. And now there are several populations in the Green Bay area now. So you can see this along here. If you are monitoring anywhere in the northeastern part of the state, you will likely be looking for European frogbit. I also want to show you a few wetland plants. These plants don't grow down in the water. We say they like to keep their feet wet. So they're most often found along the edges of the lake or the stream bank or in like a ditch. So next one is flowering rush. This plant can be tough to identify if it does not have flowers on it. So we're going to be looking for these bright pink flowers. They're on a triangular shaped stem. If you look closely at the stem, it's a triangle shape. They can be up to about 3 feet tall. And then the flowers, they have these really pretty pink flowers that are in this sort of umbrella shape. This looks like a broken umbrella, right? With all these little spokey things, and then those little pink flowers are coming off the edge there. So if it's flowering, it's really easy to identify. You just look for those pink umbrella flowers. Here's the distribution of flowering rush in Wisconsin. You can see it's kind of patchy in its distribution. And then we're going to talk about Japanese knotweed next. This one can get pretty tall, up to 5 to 10 feet tall. These leaves are spade shaped. And then if you look at the stem that the leaves are growing along, see how they're kind of zigzag if you follow my mouse here? It zigs and zags all down the stem here. They can have serrated leaf edges, and they should be flowering, August to September with these, they kind of look like firecracker flowers coming off here. So you might see them flowering if you find them. And then their stems lower down, they're hollow and they look like bamboo. And here's a map of the distribution of Japanese knotweed. Not as common up north in the state, you can see. And then I'm also going to show you a couple animals real quick, tier 2. So the first one here, these are called New Zealand mud snails. You can see they're very, very tiny snails, only about 4 to 6 millimeters. You can see them in reference to a dime here. When you're holding them, you'll notice they're very pointy. They have a lot of these are called whorls as you come up here, these different little segments here, and they're super pointy. And if you're looking at one of these snails with the pointy side facing up, you'll notice that the opening where the snail, it would be living in there, is opening oriented to the right side. So see how this is kind of pointing more to our right side here? Their color, usually they're pretty dark and kind of blackish or dark gray. Some of them can be light like a brown or a little bit lighter, but oftentimes they're usually really dark like this. And when you look into a stream, they're usually in streams where you're finding they tend to be on the rocks and the vegetation, and you look down and you see all these little black dots. But when you look closer, you can see that they're actually little tiny snails. Here's the distribution of those in Wisconsin. You can see there is a population up in Superior, but for the most part, these tend to be right now down in the southern part of the state, so not very widespread. Um, and that's great. I also want to show you zebra mussels. This is one that a lot of people have heard about or might be familiar with. They're kind of yellow to brown and have these, they're called zebra mussels because they're kind of striped like a zebra here, right? And we say that it's a D-shaped striped shell. That's a tongue twister there, isn't it? They can be up to 2 inches long, but usually they're under an inch. And the bottom side is flat. So you can see this person holding that one here. And then this is a good example right here, how the bottom side is flat. So if you put that on a table, it would just rest nice and flush with the table. And that's a little different from a quagga mussel. Some of you might be learning how to identify quagga mussels. They look really similar, but they don't sit as flat on a table as a zebra mussel. And a map of those in Wisconsin as well. And then the last one I want to show you is the freshwater golden clam. This is our last aquatic animal here. They're usually about an inch and a half, usually about the size of a quarter, but if they're younger, they'll be smaller. They're called the golden clam because they have that yellow color. They're like a yellowish green to brown in color on the outside, and then the inside is this kind of a light purple to a white on the inside. The easiest way to identify these little guys is you can see these elevated ridges on the outside here. And if you run your fingernail along those, you can feel them really easily. It's almost like you're making a little music instrument as you run your fingernail along those. And so those elevated ridges are very unique to the freshwater golden clam. Our native species of mussels are much more smooth. And the distribution of those in Wisconsin with the orange dots here, mostly in the southern part of the state again. So again, no need to feel overwhelmed by any species identification. We supply your site leader with identification guides for you to reference. And again, your job is just to bring back anything suspicious you find that looks like the species that the site leader is going to be teaching you. I also wanted to show you a picture example of the identification guides. You're going to get handed a little booklet that goes over all these species. And in that booklet, it's really nice because it goes over the invasive species up here, and then it also lists the native species that might look like the invasive species and gives you tips on telling them apart. So lots of good resources there. Next, we're going to go over the monitoring protocols. So once you learn what you look for, you're going to learn how to look for them. And I'm going to teach you the protocol that you do at each site to search for these invasive species. But I first want to show you a few tools of the trade that you're going to be using when you're out there. So the first one that your site leader is very likely going to be having you use is called a rope rake. And it's basically just what it sounds like. It's two ends of a rake that are welded or zip tied together, and they're attached to about 35 to 40 feet of rope. And this is used, you can see the scale doing it up here. It's used to toss out into the water to collect that vegetation that's farther away from you that you might otherwise not be able to see or reach. Sometimes if rope rakes are not available, or if you want a little more control over what you're grabbing more immediately in front of you, a garden rake can be used to look at that vegetation. So when you registered for the event, we asked if you would like to bring a garden rake to use for that. And then finally, this is optional. Not all sites have it, but you have the option to create and bring one with you, is a hand scoop. So these are usually made out of old plastic coffee containers. This person up here, I think this had pretzels in it at one time. It's just an old container that you drill holes in. You can use any old large plastic container. You just drill 3-inch holes into it, or slightly smaller on the sides. And then you can use that to scoop up sediment and sift through it. And you can look for the invasive animals like the snails and the clams. You can also use your hands for sifting through the sediment. Last year I saw a picture, a gal was using a spaghetti strainer or like a colander to look for to do the sifting portion, and I thought that was pretty smart too. So the three basic steps that you're going to be doing for each of the sites that you're monitoring are look, rake, and scoop. So when you're looking in the water, you're going to be scanning the shoreline, scanning for plants, looking for shells, kind of getting a lay of the land right off the bat. And then you're going to rake. So you're going to use a rake to toss it into the water to look for plants, or use just a straight garden rake to bring in some extra plants. And then you're going to scoop. Oh, here's the gal with the spaghetti strainer I was talking about here. So you're going to scoop the sediment, look for critters like snails and mussels like we just went over. And you're going to do each of these steps for at least 30 seconds. So we're going to go into depth about what each of these look like, and we're going to show examples. Each site that you're going to is going to look slightly different depending on if it's a stream, if it's a lake, if it has a boat landing. So just know this protocol is one size fits most. You may have to modify a little bit, and we're going to talk about how to do that. All right, so step one, you arrive at your site. It's going to be a lake or a river. And the first thing you're going to want to do is identify the boundaries of the area that you're wanting to sample, because you're going to search from one end to the other. Usually you choose about 50 to 100 feet to monitor along that shoreline. If you want to sample a little bit more or a little bit less, that's fine too. 50 feet is about the size of a semi-trailer, and it does not need to be perfect. These are just guidelines. We know that some boat landings are really narrow. Sometimes you just have a gravel road that leads straight down to a lake. Some sites are difficult to spread out too much because there might be a lot of vegetation or brush, or if the sediment is really mucky and you can't really move around too much, then you might be in a more narrow area. That's fine. You're just going to modify based on your site. So as you work from one end to another, this picture is showing an example here of someone monitoring. This is a very large boat landing. So you can see this is probably about 100 feet right here. And this person is going to be monitoring from the end down here all the way up here along the beach. So as you're at your monitoring site, you're going to stop 3 to 5 times along the way. And you can try to space your stopping points out evenly. If there's a dock or a pier, those are really good places to search at, even if they're not equally spaced. And again, the number of times you're stopping is going to be based on your site. So like if this was much more narrow and the trees started, down here, then that's an example where you'd only be stopping 3 times. But here we have this really nice long beach, so this site would be a good place to do 5 locations. So at each of your stops along the way, that's where you're going to be doing the look, rake, scoop. So standing there at each of your locations, you're going to scan the area for at least 30 seconds. Again, if you're in an area that is heavily vegetated, lots of plants or weeds in the water, you'll probably have to scan for a little bit longer. If it's straight sand, 30 seconds is probably totally sufficient. And then you're going to use a hand scoop or just your hands to pick up some sediment and sift through it. See if you can find any animals or small plant fragments. If you're sampling strictly from the shoreline and cannot access the water to do that, that's totally fine. And then at each of your stops, you're going to be throwing the rope rake into the water twice, once a little bit more to the left, once a little bit more to the right. If you're using a dock as a stop, we're going to walk to the end of it and throw the rake. You can sample right at a boat launch. You can see this gal's doing it with throwing a rake right here. Just something to note is at boat landings, these concrete slabs can be pretty slippery. So like in this picture, you may want to sample off to the side of it. We talked a little bit about each site being slightly different. Some sites, like if you're looking at this one, this really narrow stream here, it just doesn't make sense to use a rope rake or even a rake in general, most likely. So again, we're going to modify it based on the needs of the site. You can see if you tossed a rope rake into this picture, it'd be overkill, right? You'd be throwing it into the woods. You could use a long-handled garden rake if you needed to grab something slightly out of reach, but in this site, If you feel comfortable entering the water, you would be able to do that. And again, just showing some examples that things are going to look a little bit different depending on the site you're at. You might have a dock to toss a rake off of, you might not. You might have only have access to a long-handled rake as this person is doing in here. You might have a large area that you could throw that rake into. It might be really narrow. So each one is going to look just a little bit different. And then again, anything you think is suspicious, we're going to collect a sample and take pictures. We're going to talk about that and bring those back to your site leader for them to identify for you. And here's just a few more pictures of volunteers in action from past years to help you really visualize what you're going to be doing out there. Here's someone tossing a rake at a landing. You can see when you bring the rake back in, it's going to be full of plants that you'll be looking at and sifting through and seeing if anything looks suspicious in there. These folks are looking through things on a tray that they had handy. And then getting back to your monitoring site, your site leader is going to look at everything and tell you what you brought back. And you might even take a nice little group picture at the end. In terms of what you might want to consider wearing and bringing the day of, for what to wear, make sure that you check the weather the day of the event and dress appropriately for what feels comfortable for you based on that temperature. Your local event will be canceled if there is a thunderstorm, but if it's just a little rain, little bit of sprinkles, you're very likely going to continue with the event. So you'll want to pack some rain gear or something you don't mind getting a little sprinkled on. Then also keep in mind that you're going to be walking on uneven surfaces near the water. So sturdy shoes are a good idea. You're not required to enter the water or do anything beyond your comfort level. But if you are planning on wading into the water a little bit, make sure you wear some water shoes or shoes that you're comfortable with getting wet that have a good grip on them. Like Tevas or Keens, those are good water shoes. And then also don't forget to bring things like water to drink, a hat, sunscreen, maybe some bug spray if you wear that, or long sleeves to protect you from any potential bugs. And then also, if you recall when you signed up, there's a section on the sign up form that asks if you can bring any additional tools. So things like the long-handled garden rake, a cooler to store specimens in as you collect them, a car for carpooling, and each of you responded on items you'd be able to bring. You're not required to bring anything. We just ask if you're able to help a little bit. But be sure to bring items with you that you volunteered to bring. And if you don't remember what you signed up to bring, you can just let me know. I have my email and phone number listed at the end here, and I can just look it up for you real quick. A couple notes to remember for safety. Again, be careful of those concrete slips at the boat landings. There might be some slippery surfaces that you're going to want to avoid. We only want you going in the water if you're comfortable. If you're not comfortable going in the water, then please do not go in there. You did not have to. If there's any sort of fast water or current, don't go in there. If you choose to bring your own waders, that's optional. Don't go into any deep water where you would risk overtopping waders. There's no need to climb up and down steep banks. Basically, with telling you all this, I would rather you skip a site altogether than risk your safety. If you get there and things are not looking good, just skip the site. I've never seen a site leader choose a risky site. They're told to keep things pretty safe for you, but if you get there and you feel uncertain about anything, then we don't want you doing it. I know some of these things sound obvious, but it's worth repeating here. So if you're not comfortable getting near the water, you can always help with filling out data sheets, taking photos. You can help clean gear between the sites that we're going to talk about. So there is something for everyone to do. As you go, you're going to be filling out a data sheet. It's pretty intuitive, but I want to go over it here. This is what it's going to look like. You're going to have one of these for each monitoring site you're at. And then you're in charge of filling out the blues section. So this data sheet is going to come with some information pre-filled, like the site name that you're at and where it's located. You'll be entering the areas marked in blue, so filling out when you get to the site and when you leave it. You're going to list the names of yourself and the other volunteers that you're with. And then you're going to mark the efforts that you use. So Did you use a hand scoop? Maybe you didn't at that site. Were you able to use a rake? Did you walk along the shoreline? So this means, did you check, how we said you're going to stop at 3 to 5 points? Did you walk along the shoreline between those points, keeping an eye out for invasive species? Sometimes you're able to, and sometimes you're not. And then we ask if you checked surfaces. So these are man-made surfaces, things like piers and docks. You can say yes or no, or there's also an option to choose NA because not every site has a man-made surface at it. And then the next section down here, you're going to put any suspect invasive species you think you found. Make your best guess. So here in our example, we have someone who thinks they found Phragmites. And then we ask you to estimate the area and the density. We have some density ratings down here. You're not getting into the water and doing a survey of exact density and size of the population. You're just estimating based on what you can see. And that's so that if you find something new, you're giving your site leader a heads up on what they're going to be walking into when they go back to check those things out. So they want to know, like, did you just find a couple zebra mussels? Was the lake bed totally covered in them? That's what we're wanting to know here. Any comments you have can be listed to the side here, and there's also a box to check if you didn't see any invasive species at all. So when you're collecting specimens, if you find something suspicious, you're going to want to grab a sample of it, or we call them specimens. Try to keep it to one suspect species per baggie that you'll be given. You'll be given little plastic Ziploc baggies. And when you grab a specimen, if it's a plant, try to grab the roots and leaves and any sort of seeds or flowers from the plant that you have. If it's a big, tall, like Japanese knotweed, we talked about those can get like 10 feet tall. We don't expect you to grab a 10-foot specimen of that includes the roots or anything, but cut a little sprig off of it. You can also take photos where possible. If you can't collect a specimen, then you have to take a photo. So say you're at the water, maybe you see something that you can't reach. You're going to want to take a photo of it, or something that, for whatever reason, if you can't collect it, we want you to take a photo. And when you're taking the photo, make sure, just a couple notes, that the image is fully in focus. And then the data sheets that you're given that we just went over are on waterproof paper, and they have a ruler along the bottom. So if you have to take a photo of something, it's always great to have something in there for scale. Like if this was just this person's hand, hands come in a lot of different sizes. So it's nice to have something for scale in there, either the data sheet, or if you have a ruler with you of some kind, or a coin or something common like that. This is an example of a snail picture that would be really hard to identify. So just again, reminding you, make sure if you're taking pictures that everything's in focus, because this person was really well intended to take this picture, but unfortunately it's not very useful for identification because it's very, very blurry. So this is a case where you could collect it and bring it back to your site leader, or just make sure that your pictures are nice and in focus. We're also going to talk about cleaning gear, because we don't want to spread things while we're out looking for invasive species. So after each monitoring site that you're at, we are going to be asking you to clean your equipment and your footwear before you head to the next site. And then your site leader is going to do a big clean at the end of the day too. And that's because little plant fragments or little bits of water, all those things are ways that invasive species spread. So we want to make sure we're not contributing to that. So your site leader is going to provide everything you need to clean your stuff. They're going to give you a brush, and they're going to give you water to rinse your gear with. So you're going to rinse all your gear with water, scrub it with the brush, and then rinse it again. You're also going to be looking really closely at the bottom of your footwear, because lots of rocks and mud can get stuck in the bottom of your shoes, and we don't want to be moving that around. So an example of that I wanted to show you here. This is a pair of waders from someone who was out walking in a river, and they have, waders have these holes on the bottom, and you can see these ones have, different plants stuck here, but this person was also getting rocks stuck in the bottom of their shoes. And then look who's hiding in here in this rock, in this in this hole under their waiter. These are freshwater golden clams that we went over. So you want to be looking at everything really carefully and make sure you're cleaning your gear between sites. And then finally, we ask that you take lots and lots of pictures while you're out. If you've seen any of the marketing that we do for Snapshot Day, we always have lots of really, really awesome pictures. And that's because folks like you are taking photos and monitoring and sharing your monitoring experience and sharing them with us. So feel free to post pictures of your experience on any social media you want. If you want to use hashtags, we use Snapshot Day 2026. You can also email your photos to me or to your site leader. And then also at the end of the event, you'll be emailed an evaluation survey. It's a really quick survey. We ask a couple thoughts about your experience, and we use your feedback to help make the event better every year. And so that's really nice. And then also, as soon as all of the data come in, it takes us, a couple of weeks to analyze all the data and go through it and figure out exactly what's been new. We summarize all of that data. We make nice little infographics like I showed you for last year. And then I email all of our volunteers and let them know that the results are in, and we send you all the results so you can see, how your results contributed to the overall statewide picture. So it's really cool. A couple weeks after the event, you will be hearing from us again to let you know, all of the finding, and it's really neat to look at. So a couple parting thoughts here before I let you go. If you're still wondering a couple things like who's in charge at my site, when am I going to hear from them? Your site leader knows that you signed up for their sites because I let them know, and they're going to be in touch with you ahead of time, letting you know where to meet. They're going to let you know what to bring and reiterate some of these things we went over here today. And the site leaders are instructed to contact volunteers at least a week ahead of time. So I know some of you have heard from your site leaders already, but if you haven't, within the next few days here, you're definitely going to be hearing from them. Another reminder, you don't have to remember everything. You're going to have a lot of resources available to look at the day of, and then you'll be getting another brief training from your site leader the day of. Just want to thank all of the partners that are hosting sites around the state. You can see here we have a variety of partners. A lot of them are from counties. Some of them are from friends groups, nonprofits, nature centers, things like that. And then also just thanking you for volunteering to participate in this event. There's still time to sign up. You can sign up through August 7th, the day before the event, up until noon. So tell your friends and family to come out and join you. Okay, so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If anyone has any questions, we can put them in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, then you're welcome to do that too. Or if you're ready to take off and continue with your day, then that is fine too. Nancy is asking what a good app is for a phone to gather a lat and long. You don't need to gather a lat and long. Those are listed on your data sheet already. We already have that listed. But if you're looking for a good app on your phone, if you do want to do a lat long or a good mapping app, Google Maps works totally fine. If you hold down your finger on the location where you're at, a lat long will pop up with your precise location to give you that information.
Emily,
Yeah.
Beverly Gerds, I forget what I said I was going to bring. I know I said I was going to bring a rake, but the rest of it, a little short on.
Okay, I'm writing down your name right now, Beverly, and I will
Yeah,
send you an email after this and let you know.
good. Thank you.
Yep.
Plus, I couldn't see anything you were showing. I don't know if I did something wrong.
You couldn't see my slides?
No.
Could other people see my slides? Yeah, I see Jacob nodding. Okay, yes, other people did. It might have been one of the little settings on Zoom. It does a funny thing now when people share their screen up at the top of the bar. You can click to either see the meeting or the slides someone's showing. I'm not sharing anymore, so you won't be seeing it now.
Okay.
But when I send the recording out, if you want, you can flip through it real quick and be able to see some of those visuals that I had up there.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, if anything comes to mind, I'm going to put my email address in the chat right here. It's just emily.heald, Heald at wisc.edu. Send me an email and we can talk about if you have any questions that come up later. And again, thanks for coming. I know that you'll all have a blast. It's a really fun event every year. You'll get to meet some cool people and learn some things about your local water. So thanks again, and we'll see you out on the water.